We'll discuss Zeminyani Birkat Kohanim. The bracha the Kohanim make during, in Chutz La'aretz on Yantif. In Eretz Yisrael, you might be busy. If you go to Eretz Yisrael, that'll be a daily practice of the Kohanim blessing the people. Of course, it's not the Kohen themselves, it's the bracha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Kohen is just the medium used. So let's just go back and understand Birkas Kohanim for a minute. Number one, is it a mitzvah min Torah, or is it a mitzvah midrabanan, Birkas Kohanim? So it clearly is a mitzvah min Torah, clearly was a mitzvah min Torah. We learn that from different psukim in the Torah. In fact, they quote different psukim. The base Yosef writes, you fulfill three assays. He quotes Kol Sevarchu, Emor Lahem, and another part of the pasuk that he quotes there are even three assays involved with Birkas Kohanim. So it's clearly was and perhaps is a biblical mitzvah. The one who discusses is the Mor Kitzir of Yaakov Emden. He claims it's only rabbinical today. Why should it only be rabbinical today? Why does it get a downgrade from biblical to rabbinical? So he claims because he learns the source of Birkas Kohanim comes from Aaron HaKohen. In Parashat Shmini, when Aaron is blessing the people in conjunction with giving them a bracha, so he learns that to be Birkas Kohanim. And we see it was done in conjunction with Karbana sacrifices. So therefore, since today we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, we don't have a temple, hence Birkas Kohanim gets downgraded to only a mitzvah midrabanan. That's the opinion of Yaakov Emden. He is a minority view. Rov HaPoskim disagree and say it remains biblical. What do they do with the Taina of Rav Yaakov Emden? Well, some say simply because we don't learn it out from Parashat Shmini, we learn it out from the Psukim and Parashat Naso, and Naso is not talking about Karbanon, so that's a simple pshat. And even if you want to learn like Rav Yaakov Emden and say it's connected to the Karbanos, Rav Soloveitchik explained that it wouldn't be a problem anyway. In fact, that's why. Where do we do? Bring me a geographical proof from Birkas Kohanim. Where do we do Birkas Kohanim? We do it in the middle of Shmon Esrei. Last I checked, we don't eat matzah in the middle of Shmon Esrei. We're not shaking lulav in the middle of Shmon Esrei, albeit it's close during Hallel, but it's not during Shmon Esrei. Why are we saying Birkas Kohanim in the middle of Shmon Esrei? Because there's a famous Gemara in Brachas, Chavav Amud Beis 26b, which Ryan learned, that who instituted tefillah? Is it the Avos, or is it Keneged Karbanos? Is it based on Avram did Shacharis, Yitzchak Mincha, Yaakov Ma'ariv, or is it based on the Karbanos, based on the sacrifices? So they point out that the Gemara assumes both, because where do we know Tefillah Musa from? So therefore it's based on Avos and Karbanos. It's based on both aspects. So there's a drush in the Gemara, Tefillah Keneged Karbanos. Today, that we don't have Karbanos, we don't have the Beis HaMikdash, Tefillah takes the place. So it's not just a nice sermon, but the Rav saying it's a real drasha Gemura, that Tefillah has the halachic status of Karbanos today. So since Tefillah Keneged Karbanos, do we specifically do Birkas Kohanim in the context of Tefillah, and not just Tefillah, but we do it by the Ritzei, by the bracha, by the duchening, by the bracha of the avoda, in order to keep the connection between tefillah and avoda. So either way, we paskin that Birkas Kohanim is deraisa. So I went into yesterday about the mitzvah of the Kohanim. Looks like you dressed for biking or something. So we were discussing yesterday the aspect of Birkas Kohanim. We focused more on the Kohen, on why don't we do it in Chutz La'aretz. But today we'll continue on that, but we'll focus on another aspect, the aspect of who's included. Like we know it's clearly a mitzvah on the Kohen, clearly Avi is involved. But what about the other people in the shul? Is it a mitzvah? Are they just the recipient of the mitzvah? Or do they play a role in the mitzvah? So that seems to be a machlokas harishonim, whether it's basically a Birkat Kohanim and that's it. Yisrael plays no role except as being passive, receiving it. That seems to be the opinion of the Ritva and Sukkah. According to the Raven and its Mashra from Rashi, they know that Yisrael also play a role. And in fact, according to some, Yisrael is part of the mitzvah. It's not just that they're part of it because they happen to be in shul. Part of the mitzvah is that the Kohanim have to bless other, non-Kohanim. There has to be a bracha on the Zara. And in fact, with the Torah Tamima, when he discusses, goes through it back and forth, he wants to say, perhaps, even if Yisrael isn't directly involved, they play an indirect role, because we have a discussion in the Gemara whether women are obligated in the mitzvah of Pru of having children. Ironically, the Gemara says they're exempt, because the pasuk says Pru v'kifshuha, you conquer, and it's the derech of the man to fight wars to conquer and not women. So the Gemara has a drasha, so it's not debatable. Women are exempt from Pru, not physically exempt, but halachically exempt from Pru. So the Gemara says, what about the mitzvah of Sheves? There's a pasuk in Yeshaya that says, God didn't create the world to leave it desolate, but to inhabit the world. And so is a woman involved in the secondary mitzvah of Lasheves Yitzera? So that's two opinions in Tosis and Gin. Perhaps women, what's the difference between the mitzvah of Pruvu and Sheves? Pruvu was more rigorous in terms of dafka, specifically a boy and a girl, the specific requirement. Sheves is, you can have 6 boys and you fulfill your mitzvah of Sheves. It's a much more general mitzvah. And it's a discussion of maybe even if Goyim are included in that mitzvah. In terms of, at one point it might have been that the non-Jews were obligated in Pruvu also, but the mitzvah has changed. Originally the mitzvah was to propagate the world, and then perhaps at Har Sinai the mitzvah of Pruvu was to have more Jewish children. But so either way, that's a discussion. So the Torah Tamima raises the issue, even if you say a woman is exempt from Pruvu and Sheves, but she still has a mitzvah of Misayea. She has a mitzvah of aiding, and usually many times Misayea is used in a negative way. Misayea l'dvar aveira, aiding and abetting, like you help someone do an aveira. Let's say the only way a person can do something, it's kind of a secondary, with ne'ivir is a biblical prohibition. If the only way a person can do this sin is by you helping, and you help, that's a biblical violation of putting a stumbling block before the blind. But there's a secondary, let's say other people could do it, but you volunteer to do it with them, so then that's a din d'Rabbanan of Misayea, of help. But Misayea could be good or bad, depending on what you're helping someone in. So the Torah Tamim writes, Misayea, part of the mitzvah of the woman is obviously the man can't have the baby, the man's chayav in Pru. So obviously part of the mitzvah on the wife is to, even though strictly speaking the mitzvah is on the man, but the mitzvah Misayea, she's included in the mitzvah. Why is a woman, it seems to be counterintuitive, why is a woman exempt from Pru? It seems to be her mitzvah. So the Meshach Chachma in Parashas Noach gives a physical as well as a psychological reason why women are exempt from Pru. Either one, because the pain of childbirth is nothing like it. And I would know, by the way. How would I know? I know there was a movie a long time ago. Actually, I read it in Rabbi Black's Contemporary Halachas. There's a movie where this person, like a man becoming pregnant. It was a Hollywood thing. You see it sometimes on the front page of those tabloid things, like man becoming pregnant.
Rabbit test.
But so either way, that's not how I know. By the way, I had a kidney stone, and they say kidney stone is the equivalent of childbirth. I like to, of course, a woman might disagree. I say it's worse because at least childbirth is a natural thing. Kidney stones ain't, by the way. But either way, we could discuss the pain of both. I'm sure they're not pleasant either way. But since the mitzvah of having children involves so much pain, God didn't want to directly, Torah's ways are sweet. God didn't want to directly command the women on a mitzvah which involves so much pain. Apparently, bris milah isn't that as painful, and we don't remember it. It's only when we do it when we're 8. Maybe if you do it older, it might be. But so that's one reason the Meshech Chochmah gives, because they didn't want to command the woman in a mitzvah that involves so much pain. Or secondly, a more psychological aspect is we know the straight halach is a man can have many wives. Obviously today we don't. We have one. Rabbi Gershon, maybe forget about him. Many practical reasons we're not going to have more than one. But obviously a woman cannot have 2 husbands. Besides, she might not want 2 husbands. But halakhic reasons, you don't know who the father is. If she gets pregnant, then that's why a man can, in theory, have 2 different wives. You know who the mother and father is in theory. So therefore, what would happen if a man can't have kids? So then if the mitzvah prurubu was on the woman, she'd have to get a divorce. And therefore, to put a woman, a man and woman in love with each other, and you get a divorce. So therefore, God set it up where you don't have to get divorced from your first wife. In theory, you could get a second wife. But either way, there's a psychological element as well as a physical. Why perhaps again, it's based on the pasuk prurubu v'chevshua, and Meshech Chochmah gives 2 interesting reasons, both physical and psychological, trying to explain why a woman is exempt. So either way, the Torah Tamina says that perhaps the Yisrael plays a role of misayeya. It enables, not my mitzvah, it's the Kohen's mitzvah, but I enable the Kohen to do his Birkat Kohain by being there. So that's a discussion what role a Yisrael has. So interesting. There's a Gemara in Ksuvis which says it's usher for a zar to go up and do Birkas Kohanim. A zar meaning a non-Kohen, either a Levi Yisrael, to go up and do the Birkas Kohanim. That's a Gemara in Ksuvis. However, there's a Gemara in Shabbos, Rav Yossi. Rav Yossi says, you know what? If I was around during Birkas Kohanim, and I'm not a Kohen, and my friends told me to go up and come up with them, or come up, I would go up and do Birkas Kohanim. In other words, Rav Yossi, who's a non-Kohen, says he would go up and do Birkas Kohanim. So the question is obvious. How could he do that? It's an issur. We just said, the Gemara tells us in Ksuvis, there's a prohibition, there's an issur for a non-Kohen to go up and do Birkas Kohanim. So how in the world, what did Rabbi Yossi mean? How could Yossi go up and say, I would have done Birkas Kohanim? So actually there's different approaches to this question. This also, when we answer this question, it might give us another answer to another famous question. It's also part of it, this is probably more practical. The question is, there's a minhag among many parents, every Friday night, they give their children brachas. And we're doing, it seems to be similar to the Birkas Kohanim. So the question is, how could a parent non-Kohen go ahead and give their kids the bracha? Or simply, some have a minhag at a wedding, they do the bracha, for the chas and akal or whoever. So how do we explain these minhagim? So the different approaches. The Tshuvas HaRamah, the Ramah writes, it depends. When does the Gemara say, either way, when does the Gemara say it's usher, or the other end? When did Rav Yossi say he would go up? That's when he was alone, or with other Kohanim. So according to Ramah learns, we're going to have two different approaches, totally opposite. Which one would you say? Alone? When's the prohibition for a non-Kohen to go up? When let's say there's no Kohen, he goes up and does it? Or there are other Kohanim, and he does it? Which one would you say is better? Better, worse? You tell me.
How about it would be worse if he was the only one going up, because then there would be no Kohanim blessing. At worst, it seems that if he goes up and there are other Kohanim, then he's sort of meaningless. But it isn't a charade, because there are Kohanim giving blessings.
Right, so the Ramah seems to learn that way. The problem is when a Kohen goes up by himself, when a non-Kohen goes up by himself, but he goes up with other Kohanim, so whether the issue, let's even assume the bracha is not the problem, we won't even make the bracha. But when he goes up alone, that's when it's an Isser. He's, whether it's Baal Tosef, he's making believe he's a Kohen, whatever the Ramah's problem is. But if he goes up with other Kohanim, so then the Ramah says that's what Rav Yossi meant. He would have went up with other Kohanim, but he wouldn't have went up alone. Yeah?
Would that not just be a problem for him and not for the people? Would the people receive the benefit of doing the blessing? Because I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago you said that if a shul gives a Kohen aliyah to somebody who's not a Kohen, it's not considered to be wrong. It's the person's problem, not the shul's problem, because they were giving kavod to the Kohanim. So would that not extend to this situation?
Right, no, so right. So therefore, what Ryan...
Except they might know in this case.
Yeah, what Ryan's referring to is the Chasim Sofer in the beginning of Parashas Emor. He raises the question, let's say someone comes in, you don't know who they are, they come to shul, the Gabbai comes over and says, you're a Kohen Levi Yisrael. You think, I always wanted to be a Kohen, I always wanted that first elite, I'm a Kohen. So he gets up, gives him Kohen, and later on either he tells or they find out. So the Chasim's over there, it's no problem, because the mitzvah isn't on the personal Kohen. If you come to my house and I say, I want you to bench, I'm not necessarily giving you covet personally, maybe I may have not. It's the institution of kahuna we're giving honor to. So as long as you told me I thought I was giving it to a Kohen, that's the institution of kahuna. So here, you're right, from that aspect, if that was the only problem, and this person claimed he was a Kohen, then maybe it would be okay. But it still would be a problem because there's a separate independent law for a zar. There's no independent law for a non-Kohen to get Kohen. So, but in here there's a specific Isser Aseh, so then it would be, but from that aspect, you're right, it would be okay, because you are giving coverage, assuming, as Jeff pointed out, the guy might say, well, I'm not a Kohen, but no one else, I'm gonna go up and be a Kohen today. We do have it in other ways. There is a minig that some have, let's say, I haven't seen it, but I've read it, that some, on Shavuos, for the first Aliyah, it's not the Aseret Dibros per se, but we're going to be reading it that day. They give the Mora, the Asra, the Talmud Chacham, the first Aliyah. And even though, strictly speaking, really, if you look at the Gemaras and Mishnayos, strictly speaking, a Talmud Chacham takes precedence over Kohen. Like Talmud Chacham over a Kohen Amaretz, but that's not the minig today. Today, the minig today is even a Kohen Amaretz takes precedence. But so assuming that minig, but some have a minig specifically on Leil Shavuos that they call up the Talmud Chacham b'makam Kohen because of this reason. But in general, so that's why it would be a problem. So it says when he's alone, it's a problem. If he goes with others, it's not a problem. Others say the Bach says no. You know what Rabbi Yossi meant? You know when the only time it's a problem for a zar, a non-Kohen, to go up and give Birkat Kohanim, if he does the spot routine, he goes up with his fingers, he spreads it, and he does what the Kohanim do during Birkat Kohanim. He holds Nesias Kapayim. It's the raising of the hands. It's not the saying of the verses per se, but we see from here that Nesias Kapayim, the actual lifting, plays a major role according to the Bach. In fact, there's a Rashba that writes that we know a Kohen, part of Birkat Kohanim, you make the 3 brachas. That's what it is. Let's say a Kohen, the Gemara says if a Kohen wants to make 4 brachas instead of 3, it's Baal Tosef. He violates adding, just like you can't put 5 parshios in the tefillin, you can't put 5 species in the Daled Minim. You can't, a Kohen, he violates adding to the Torah if he adds another bracha. So the Rashba qualifies, when is it a problem? That's only on the 4th bracha he does in the Siyas Kapayim. But if this says the 4th pasuk without this, then there's no problem. And in fact, that's what some explain. Perhaps this will answer the Minig Yisrael of they say the Vilna Gaon, when he was giving a bracha to a chassan or something. So he did the Birkat Kohanim. He put one hand on top of that's what just happened to me my Minig Friday night based on the Gra. That the Vilna Gaon put one hand, and he said obviously the Siyas Kapayim, not the Siyas Kappa. Apparently, one hand wouldn't be an issue, and that's where the minig of, I don't know, but most parents anyway, don't say go into the Kohen pose anyway. I don't know, you usually put a hand on the head or something like that. So some say if you don't do the Siyas Kapayim, so then, it wouldn't be a problem. Others point out, the Magen Giborim, that a different problem, that we know that as the Gemara talks about mitzvah striches kavana. The Gemara has a machlokas whether mitzvahs require intent. As I always point out, you mean someone says, we're about to put on a tefillin. So someone says, you know what, you don't have kavana? So of course not, that's not a shita. Everyone agrees you should have kavana before you do it. The question is a legal post facto question. If you did a mitzvah without the requisite kavana, do you have to redo the mitzvah? That's the only question. So that's a discussion in the Gemara. So we, the Mishnah Berurah, the Magen Avraham, we seem to work with on a mitzvah daraisa, we paskin yes, mitzvah striches kavana. On a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, we paskin mitzvahs ein striches kavana. So Birkat Kohain is a mitzvah min Torah, as we started this year with. So they have a mitzvah striches kavana. So therefore, it's no problem when a father blesses the child. He's not doing Birkat Kohain. It's nothing to do with I'm blessing it's Birkat Habanim or Habanas. There's nothing to do with Birkat. I don't have any kavana. I'm not imitating a Kohen. And therefore it's not a problem. So perhaps they said, so Rav Yossi went up, he didn't have kavana to do Birkat Kohanim. He said, I would just go up and do do similar things. But I didn't go, as before, I didn't go around tell people I was a Kohen and this is Birkat Kohanim. But he maybe for some reason he didn't think there was any harm just going ahead and and saying the different verses, but not that he was claiming to being a Kohen and saying we're fulfilling the mitzvah of Birkas Kohanim. The fourth approach is the opposite of Ramah. The fourth approach is specifically to go up by yourself. That's okay, because no one. But if you to go up when there are other Kohanim, that's a problem, because as I mentioned yesterday, part of the mitzvah, and that's what we mentioned this morning, is working with the opinion that it's not only the Kohen's mitzvah to do the blessing, but there's a mitzvah on the Yisrael or non-Kohanim to be blessed. That there's two parts of this mitzvah.
It's like shofar.
Right, and therefore panim al panim. You have to be, as I said, people have a erroneous custom of turning their backs on the Kohanim because they don't want to look at them. One should definitely not do that, then you're totally excluding yourself from the bracha. Better to accidentally look at the Kohen than to turn your back on them. Or else you're not so in fact, there's a discussion in different parts of the shul where you're sitting that you could be you're behind the Kohanim, so they say you're not included. You got to make sure you're in front of the Kohanim. And in fact, there's a whole discussion on that. So the Hafla writes, you know why it's okay if you're going up, if there's no Kohanim, then you're not missing anything. But if the Kohanim are giving a bracha, you're online, you're up there giving the bracha with them, you're not going to be included with them. You're sitting there facing the Kal, and you're a Yisrael, you're going to miss the bracha. So that's why you shouldn't be doing it. Going up if there's no Kohanim, big deal. You're not losing anything. Go up and do. Rav Yosef could have gone up and do his own show. But if your other Kohanim are there, then you go up. The problem is you're missing your mitzvah, being the second half of panim al panim. That's the problem. So we have minakatza el akatza. We have 4 different explanations of why, when it would or wouldn't be a problem. Because we know there's an issur for a non-Kohen to do Birkas Kohanim, and yet we see Rabbi Yosef said he would have done it. So either like the Ramah going up alone, that's the problem. We had the Bach, it's only if you don't raise your hand. If you raise your hand, that's the problem. If you don't do the Nesiyas Kavayim, it's not. We had the Magen Giborim, based on mitzvah striches kavana. You don't have the kavana. And number 4 is specifically when other Kohanim are giving the bracha. You're going to miss it. If you're up there with the Kohanim, you're going to miss the panim el panim. And that's the minhag. That's why the minhag Yisrael still remains intact, whether it's at a wedding or at Friday night. One could continue giving a bracha. And according to the 4th explanation, there's nothing to talk about. The problem is you're missing a bracha from a Kohen. There's no problem with Yisrael giving one. It's if you go up there, you're missing it. So Friday night, you're not missing any bracha. You're just giving, so there's no problem at all. You can continue your minhag of doing the bracha to your children.